Welcome to the Nitro College Football Show. My name is Burl.
And my name's Street.
And today we are going to preview the semifinals of the college football playoff. And we'll talk about some news from around college football. But before we do so, we want to thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that notify bell. Don't miss any updates. Like the video, please drop a comment and share it with your friends. It really helps the show.
And if you're listening on audio, please be sure to like the episode and leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Okay, college football semifinals. We are down to the final four. Want to talk some Cotton Bowl?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so Cotton Bowl's featuring Texas versus Ohio State. Should be a great matchup, but I'm just hoping for a decent game because Ohio State's been destroying everybody recently.
They absolutely have, putting up 40 plus the last couple of weeks in the playoffs. They've been on a roll, finally living up to that, potential that we saw for them coming into the season. The spread on this game right now is Ohio State favored by 6. As you said, hopefully it's a little bit of a better game than that. The first 2 rounds have not been a contest for Ohio State. This is the first meeting of these two teams since 2009. They played in the Fiesta Bowl that year. Texas won that game 24-21. All-time, Texas leads the series 2-1. So Ohio State looking to get even in their all-time series against Texas. But this game really is a true battle of talent versus talent. There are stars all over the field, both on the offense and defensive side of the ball for both of these teams. And it's just going to be nuts. Just looking, quick look at the statistics behind this game. Both these teams have really good offenses. Total offenses, Ohio State's 27th, Texas is 17th. Scoring offense, Ohio State a little bit better there, 11th versus Texas 21. But where these teams really shine is on the defensive side of the ball. These are 2 of the top defenses in the country. Ohio State is number 1 in both total and scoring defense, while Texas comes in at number 3 in total defense and number 4 in scoring defense. Should be an absolute bloodbath on the field.
Yeah,
Thursday night.
On paper, it looks like a defensive fan's dream. Like if you liked the old LSU versus Alabama, the 6-3 game, looking at how these defenses are ranked, you would think you would be getting that type of game. But we all know with that offensive talent that's spread across on both teams, really, and really on Ohio State, I mean, they've got Jeremiah Smith, who is by far the best player in the playoff right now. I mean, he's absolutely the best offensive player, in my opinion, in college football. He is unstoppable.
Yeah. I mean, he's been that good all season, but these last few weeks, and up against good defenses as well, just making guys look silly out there. And he's really helped Will Howard look like the best he's looked all year. Earlier in the year, we even on this podcast questioned Will Howard a little bit, but the last 2 weeks, you can't question the guy. He has been absolutely lights out, hitting Jeremiah Smith, hitting Emeka Egbuka, really taking advantage of his good receivers, mixing that in with their stars, their 2-headed stars, running back in Judkins and Travion Henderson. Just Ohio State's just on fire right now on offense, and it's going to be a tough task for that Texas defense that has been great all season long.
Yeah, I'm looking for this game. So some of the keys. Let's talk about keys to the game.
Yeah.
For both these teams. So for Texas, obviously they have to get pressure on Will Howard. I think that's the only way that Texas has any chance to win. And then their running game has to get going, and they have to keep the ball away from Ohio State. Basically, do Georgia's game plan that we did against them, and what Notre Dame did against Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting running game will be key for both of these teams because both these teams have been so good defensively that if you try to make these quarterbacks one-dimensional, it's probably going to be a definite advantage for the defense. So I think the running games will be key for both sides in this game. Obviously, Texas's running game has been a little bit up and down here the last few weeks. After being kind of really hot in the second half of the season, Georgia kind of stymied that really well. And they also didn't really have a good rushing game against Arizona State last week either. It's really been more on Quinn Ewers Granted, Quinn Ewers probably had his best game of the season against Arizona State passing wise. So if Ohio State, can keep that trend up and force Quinn Ewers to beat them, I think that bodes well for success for Ohio State.
Yeah, I agree. But they really got to get that running game going. As far as Ohio State goes, they have to make sure that Will Howard, he has to have a clean game. No interceptions, no bad, decisions there. And what'll make that a lot easier is just getting the ball to Jeremiah Smith. The more they get it to him, the better their whole offense will go. And they just need to continue being the juggernaut that they are. When I think of how they've been playing, I picture Juggernaut from X-Men.
Yeah.
With a Buckeye on his helmet.
Yeah, I think in both of their playoff games, they got out to big leads. The other team kind of mulled around a little bit and kind of got back in the game. And then they just hammered them right down and said, "Nope, this game is over. It's done." If they can do that, Texas has not exactly been a quick score offense. So they could really be in trouble if Ohio State can jump out to a big lead. Because Texas, honestly, over the last half of the season, really the last 5 games, has been in this kind of mode where they've been up in games, but they've kind of fallen asleep a little bit and let the teams that they're playing kind of get back or hang around maybe a little bit longer than they should. If you look at the Kentucky game, I think the final was 28-14, it was a little bit closer than that. Texas A&M, they kind of could have put them away, but they didn't. The Georgia game, obviously, they were stifling the Georgia offense in the first half, but kept close, and Georgia ended up, winning the game in the end. The Clemson game, they got out to a lead, but then they kind of played with their food a little bit. And then, obviously, letting Arizona State get back in the game and forcing it to overtime last week. Their talent is there, and their defense is strong enough to kind of hold it off, but sometimes their offense just kind of goes into hibernate and doesn't put people when they should. And if they do get a chance to be up early on Ohio State and they don't take advantage of it, Ohio State will absolutely make them pay for that.
Yeah. If they can get up early and put Ohio State in obvious passing situations, then they're going to be in good shape, because we know that D-line for Texas can get after it. And they have great defensive backs. I know we saw that a lot. There's just NFL players all over the field for both these teams.
There's so much talent in this game. There are so many solid players, both on offense and defense. On the Texas side on defense, you've got great linebackers, great defensive backs. On the Ohio State side, you've got Jack Sawyer, you've got Caleb Downs, you've got Tuamola. Really just awesome players. So this really should be a true matchup of talent versus talent.
So who you got?
Well, one other thing, I guess, the over-under in this game is 53.5, which when you have the number 1 and number 4 scoring defense, that seems high. I'm not going to lie. That seems like high. That's going to be pushing it against these defenses. I think if it does get up to that point, that might lend a little direction towards Texas, because it says that both teams are not necessarily destroying the other. That being said, unless Texas maybe breaks out the Arch Manning package or finds some way to really, really open up their offense, I just don't see them having the offensive horses to hang with Ohio State. So I think Ohio State's going to win the game. I think Ohio State probably covers the game, but I do think that the score is probably less than that 53.5 total. What do you think?
I think Ohio State wins comfortably. I don't see them having really much trouble with Texas, just given how Ohio State's offense has been playing. They are the juggernaut. They've got the best roster in college football, and they've got the best offensive player in college football. And pair that with the number 1 defense in college football, I see them just breezing through this game and on to the national championship. Yeah, I guess I could see the total points getting up there. If it's an Ohio State blowout, most of those points could be Ohio State, and then throw in maybe 20 for Texas just because garbage time.
if it's a game much like the Oregon game, they get a lead or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, you could see it then.
All right. So both going Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. So let's talk some Orange Bowl. When's the last time you ate an orange?
When was the last time I ate an orange? I ate a piece of an orange like yesterday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
My daughter likes to eat oranges, so I
Probably
ate a
been
little
like
bit
a
of
year
one.
or two for me. I love
No, yeah,
oranges, though. They're great.
I think I eat tangerines more than I eat actual oranges, but because they don't have seeds, they're a little bit easier to eat.
Tangerines. Love it. So, Orange Bowl, we got Penn State versus Notre Dame. Yeah, I think this is going to be one of the more entertaining games. It's two more evenly matched teams going against each other.
Yeah, I mean, when you look statistic-wise, these teams feature very, very strong defenses. Penn State 6th overall in total defense, Notre Dame 8th. Scoring-wise, Penn State 7, Notre Dame 2nd. So much like our first game that we talked about tonight, very, very strong defensively. These teams are not quite as strong offensively as the ones featured in the early game. However, it will be said that Notre Dame is only 49th in the country in total offense, but they're 4th in the country in scoring offense. So they make their opportunities count and they get points. Penn State is 25th in the country in total offense, but 24th in scoring. So it's a little bit of an anomaly there. The spread on this game is Notre Dame favored by 2. This will be the 20th meeting between these two teams. The first meeting since 2007. Penn State won that last meeting. The series is tied 9 games to 9 games and 1 tie. So this will be a tiebreaker.
Something's got to give.
Yep. Whereas in that first game, Ohio State's trying to get even. In this one, we're going to be breaking a tie because, in college football, we don't have ties anymore. So somebody will be getting an advantage here. Both teams feature strong rushing backfields that are not spearheaded by just one guy. Obviously, on the Notre Dame side, we've got Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. And over on the Penn State side, you've got Allen and Singleton. Both of these guys are very, very strong running backs. It's worth being noted that Jeremiah Love did get hurt in the Sugar Bowl. He hurt his knee, and so he has been limited in practice this weekend, and he is wearing a brace on his knee. Now, they said they expect him to play, but that could, factor in because, as we saw in that first-round game, he's one of those breakaway guys that can certainly break one at any time. Jadarian Price kind of carried the load, especially in the fourth quarter for Notre Dame when they were kind of churning out some yards to kind of kill the clock against Georgia. And of course, Riley Leonard is back there too to carry the ball. But this will be a good matchup of two strong rushing backfields that feature quarterbacks who can run. Obviously, Riley Leonard runs a little bit more than Drew Aller, but Drew Aller's not afraid to pull it down and run either. In their playoff games, both these teams have kind of relied on their running games and not really made their quarterbacks throw a lot. I think both of them have thrown it about 20 times a game in both of their games. So it could be the team that really forces the quarterback to step up and kind of make throws and make plays. It could be the one that ultimately makes a difference in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things I think for Penn State is, they've got to get the ball to Tyler Warren. He's there, do everything, tight end, back, his best tight end in the country. He's 2 catches away from 100 receptions for the year, 1,000 yards. I mean, he's their leading receiver. So wherever and however they can get him the ball, they're going to be in good shape. And I was also kind of shocked. Penn State, they have 2,000-yard rushers on their team. Keytron Allen and Nick Singleton are both 1,000-yard rushers. That was kind of eye-popping to me because, I haven't really focused on Penn State this year. But, I think, they need to run the hell out of the ball with those guys as much as they can.
And Georgia, in the Sugar Bowl, Georgia couldn't take advantage of Riley Mills being out. Notre Dame had a really, really good game plan to kind of bring rush blitz and kind of put pressure on the Georgia rush game, and Georgia couldn't solve it. Penn State needs to try to take advantage of that. They need to look at that film and kind of scheme around it because I think Notre Dame's going to have a similar game plan than what they had for Georgia. Make the quarterback beat you. Even though Drew Aller obviously is a much more seasoned, experienced quarterback, than Gunnar Stockton was.
Yeah,
If they can do that, if they can, make Aller be kind of the focus of the game, I think that bodes well for them coming out with a win here.
yeah, and really, on the Penn State side, the coaches, they got to keep doing what works. We've seen a lot of their games in the playoff where, they have a good lead, but then all of a sudden they just stop doing what was working. We saw that big time against Boise, and it's like, what are you doing? Why are you letting them hang around? And then when they finally get back to doing what was working, then they run away with it. So if they just stick to it and not get cute, they're going to have a good chance to pick up the dub.
Yep.
On the Notre Dame side, let's they're probably going to hope that Penn State coaches do what they do.
Yep.
The exact opposite of what I was just saying. And their defense, they have to play like they did against Georgia and keep getting turnovers. Turnovers have been the thing for that defense. They lead the nation in turnovers and scoring defense, or actually scoring touchdowns on defense. So that's going to be a big thing if they can continue to hold down that run game and get some timely turnovers like they did against Georgia. Then they'll be set up pretty well as well.
Yeah, I'd say both of these teams have benefited greatly from turnovers in their playoff wins. Obviously, Penn State, was gifted 2 pick sixes in their first round game. Obviously, Notre Dame feasted on the fact that Georgia fumbled the ball going in the red zone and also at their own 10-yard line to kind of help them have what some people are calling the greatest 56 seconds in the history of college football, where you take a 3-3 game and make it a 17-point game. The other piece of that, making it a 17-point game, was Jaden Harrison is an X factor in this game. The 98-yard touchdown that he had against Georgia, it was good blocking, but it was mostly he's one of the best, returners in the country. He's been that way all year. I would expect Penn State to try to kick it away from him, but sometimes it doesn't always happen. Peyton Woodring said that his goal was to kick it out of the back of the end zone, and he just didn't hit it right. Georgia didn't intend to kick it to him, but they did, and Harrison made him pay. So that could be an X factor. If Penn State can't put the ball away from him, then he could get some yards because he's done it all year for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And for Notre Dame, they've got to focus on stopping the run and getting Aller to throw, forcing Aller to beat him. If they can do that, they'll be in a good spot. So offensively, they need to control the ball and let that running game cook and let those 2 backs and Riley Leonard do what they do and run wild.
Yep. So who you got, Burl?
So I'm going to go with Notre Dame in a close one, and primarily because I believe that they have better coaching. We talked about it a little bit before where Penn State, they stopped doing what works. And for Notre Dame, what they've shown over the past couple of weeks to me is that they continue to do what works. And their defensive line has been awesome over the past couple of weeks. We saw it last week against Georgia, flying all over the ball, causing turnovers, wreaking havoc. And I think they'll be able to actually put a clamp down on that running game and put Penn State in a passing position, forcing Drew Aller to beat them. And I don't think Drew Aller can beat them.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Notre Dame in a close game, maybe a little bit higher scoring than the 45.5 over under. And the reason I'm going to go with Notre Dame is at the end of the day, I think these are 2 very matched teams. Solid running, solid defense, big guys, good lines, well coached. There's not a lot of difference, but the one thing that is difference between the 2 teams is who they've had to play to get to this point. Penn State has had an easy coast through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. They played an SMU team first year as a Power 4 team, was clearly overmatched, on size and speed. And then they got to play Boise State, a team out of the Mountain West, who clearly the size was a disadvantage. They couldn't get their star running back going. Notre Dame, on the other hand, had to play an in-state rival, Indiana, who was maybe a little bit overmatched as well, and they got blitzed. But then they had to play a tough game against Georgia, a team that had more talent than they did, and they found a way to kind of dictate a lot on the line in a close game. So I'm going to go with Notre Dame simply on the fact that I think they're a little more battle-tested, and I trust that they'll get the job done. And it'll give us a Notre Dame versus Ohio State national championship game,
which will be massive, and obviously the TV networks are going to be doing cartwheels over that.
Yeah. Another thing that I heard the other day was there will be a coach who wins his first ever national championship this year. So we'll have a new coach that joins the ranks of the national championship winning coaches.
So next year will be like this year. There will be 3 coaches who have won national championships.
Right. Right.
Because that other one got axed.
Because it'll be Dabo, Kirby, and whoever wins this year.
Yep. Should be fun. Looking forward to it. Can't wait. And yeah, so let's talk some college football news. Where do you want to start?
So I guess we'll start with the tough week for Kirby Smart. Georgia was faced with a unique situation, obviously, with the horrible act that happened in New Orleans on New Year's Eve / New Year's morning. The day before, Kirby's dad was in town for the Sugar Bowl and fell and ended up in the hospital. And after Georgia lost the Sugar Bowl, Kirby's dad passed away. So Kirby Smart, tough week, man. You had your father's in town for the Sugar Bowl that you're trying to coach your team in the playoff. He gets hurt. He's in the hospital. That's wearing on your mind. A terrorist attack happens. Your game gets delayed. You're not really sure what's going on. You lose a tough ball game, and then your father dies. Kirby Smart's one of the strongest men in America to deal with the things that he does day in and day out. And from the Georgia, us in the Georgia nation, this hurts. We hurt for him. Obviously, everybody was sad about the results of the game, but sometimes you realize that maybe those type of things aren't as big as other things going on in your life. And if Georgia had continued on, it would have been even a tougher week this week to try to coach up your team and get ready for another playoff game. A quick turnaround and traveling, to Miami. So, my heart goes out to Kirby Smart. It's just tough. His son is friends with my nephew, and so, and my sister knows Kirby and Mary Beth, and it's just a shame. It sucks that this happened, and there's been a lot, Kirby's dad was a coach and kind of brought him up in the coaching world. So our hearts go out to Kirby Smart and his family.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel terrible for him and his family, everything that they've had to go through this past week. It probably is a good thing that Georgia lost, because that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of life, right? Like your family's going to matter the most. And I'm glad that Kirby's able to be there, with his family to get through this.
Yep.
So thoughts and prayers out there to Kirby Smart and his family, and turning in, to some better news. Transfer portal is finally paying off for Georgia.
It is. So Georgia got its news. We got our first transfer portal commit, and it actually ended up being 2. Georgia got a commit from Zachariah Branch from USC, and coming with that is also his brother Zion, who's a safety. So Zachariah Branch was the number 2 player overall in the transfer portal. He's a former 5-star receiver, was an All-American as a freshman at USC. He plays mostly slot receiver, and he was the number 2 receiver overall in the portal behind Eric Singleton, who came from Georgia Tech and went to Auburn. And then, like I said, Zion is a safety. He's played a lot of backup time in his years at USC. He had season-ending injuries both in 2022 and 2023 that kind of derailed the start of his career, but he was a top 100 player in the country, a 4-star coming out of high school. So both of those guys will give Georgia a little bit of depth and hopefully the shot that we need, because as we've started to see, and as David Pollock predicted, Georgia's going to have more guys jumping in the portal.
Yeah, it was good to see this finally happen, because we got 2 for 1. We shoot our shot, we make it count. But it helps that receiving room so much to have someone with that caliber of credentials coming in, and pair that with the class that's coming in and the veterans who are already there. We're going to go from wide receiver room being kind of a glaring weakness at Georgia to probably one of the strengths next year.
Right.
And that's great, especially when you're breaking in a new quarterback.
Right. And the decision we talked about last week that related to the JUCO years not counting towards players' eligibility, that kind of opens the door that if Colby Young's legal situation gets cleared up, which is anticipated to happen, he potentially could return to Georgia's team next year. He would have been out of eligibility otherwise, but the NCAA made, a clear waiver after the Diego Pavia case that players who had those JUCO years now would be able to get another year or 2 or whatever based on how many years they spent in JUCO for those players immediately affected. So we could get Colby Young back, which would be great. I know Georgia's still after a few other guys, wide receivers. I know they're chasing the kid from Texas A&M. So if they can get, another big-time receiver in the portal, that would be awesome. And it really would help.
Would be even more awesome if we could get that left tackle out of Alabama.
Yeah, if we could get Elijah Pritchett, which, if we want to talk about transfer portal stuff, Alabama is seeing some serious movement in the portal. They had the upset loss to Michigan in their bowl game. Jalen Milroe and Jahad Campbell declared for the draft. So there were questions about those guys coming back or not. And Alabama's just had a rash of guys going into the portal. And like you said, the one that I would love for Georgia to get is Elijah Pritchett. Was a 5-star coming out of high school, has been a starter at Alabama now. He was their starter at right tackle for most of this year, though he struggled some. And so throughout towards the end of the season, he was seeing some split duty. But he's one of those guys. He definitely has the tools. And I think if we could get him in, I think anything would be better than the revolving doors that we had at left and right tackle this year. So I don't know if Georgia's going to be a player for him or not. I have not heard that, but he would just be one that I would love for us to go after.
Yeah, I would love to see them just go after tackles, in the portal for the between now and spring. Yeah. Just load up on tackles, because everywhere else is pretty good, and we were just dominated at the tackle position all year long.
So some other interesting things going on in the portal. Jaden Rashada is going to go back into the transfer portal. For those of you who are not familiar with the Jaden Rashada story, Jaden Rashada was
It's the Jaden Rashada saga at this point.
It really is. So Jaden Rashada was the 3rd or 4th string quarterback at Georgia this year. He redshirted. He didn't play a single snap this year, but I don't think he ever expected to. He started last year as a true freshman at Arizona State, but how he ended up at Arizona State is really interesting. He was originally a Miami commit, and then Florida offered him this huge amount of money, and he flipped his commitment from Miami to Florida. He signed his national letter of intent, and then Florida said, we can't pay you the money that we promised you. So at that point, he got out of his letter of intent. And while he's been at Georgia this year, he has been part of a lawsuit to sue the University of Florida for money owed to him, and Billy Napier. So that's been going on. But when he got out of his letter of intent, it was late, and there was not really anybody needing of a quarterback. So he actually ended up at Arizona State. He ended up starting 3 or 4 games for Arizona State last year, but knew that he wanted to go somewhere back where he could develop. And so he came to Georgia, And his dad has been very outspoken and said, Georgia didn't pay us any money. I think he came to Georgia expecting that he was going to sit this year. And his dad's been very vocal. If you've seen his dad on social media, his dad, talks a lot of trash about Florida, especially during Florida week. But just has been very vocal that they felt the love at Georgia. But I think the development of Gunnar Stockton coming in and playing solidly and kind of, looking like to be the heir apparent to Carson Beck, I think the writing was on the wall that he was just going to leave. I think there were, some talk was that Puglisi has actually passed him on the depth chart. So, it's a loss for Georgia, but it's not really a loss for Georgia. He was a guy who came in. It was kind of us taking a flyer, but he appreciated his family, appreciated us coming in and helping him develop. So good luck to him. I hope he finds, somewhere successful, as long as it's not somewhere in the SEC that we're going to play next year.
Yeah, for real. I mean, we don't need any other quarterbacks going to other teams and kicking our butts.
Right. There was another interesting situation that happened with a high-profile quarterback. Oregon signee Jaron Key Segapultelli. I'm sure I butchered that like crazy. In this year's class, for the 2025 class, signed with Oregon, enrolled early, spent some time with them in their bowl practice, and then all of a sudden has jumped into the transfer portal after being on campus for a week maybe and going through some practice. So an early enrollee is already jumping into the transfer portal and now is transferring to Cal.
That is wild. That is wild. Not even a year on the team. Like,
not even
literally a few weeks. I mean, seriously, like, good Lord, I feel for these coaches. They must be the hair falling out constantly. Just, okay, I have to recruit these guys every day just to keep them here, even after they just sign and enroll early. You think you get an early enrollee, you're like, okay, they're coming on board and they know what's up and they're going to be hoping to, get some playing time next year.
Right.
Not this guy.
Yeah, and it's weird now because they have this transfer portal window that extends for the playoff teams. So if your team is still alive, even though that first transfer portal window was in early December, if you're on a playoff team, you have 5 days after your team's last game to still enter the transfer portal. So because Oregon was still alive, the transfer portal was technically open for anybody on the team for Oregon after they lost. So that's why
5 business days.
I have no clue. I think it's just 5 days. But that's why he could go in the portal. So I don't know if this is a situation that he got there and he realized he didn't want to be there and like they won't let him out of a letter of intent, but the portal window's open, so he took advantage or what. But I didn't read into too much in the details. It just seems really strange that we're seeing this with kids, who didn't even give a chance to go to the school that they signed with,
Yeah, especially signing with Oregon and going to Cal.
But just weird. Yeah. Now, speaking of weird and other things that we dislike, NIL money.
This is going to be a get off our lawn segment.
This is going to be a get off our lawn. Louisville has a punter, and their punter did not play in their bowl game. He opted out of the bowl game because he claims that he did not receive NIL money that he was promised. We've got punters opting out of bowl games because they're not getting paid NIL money. How much? I mean, I don't know the details, but how much money is the punter on the team getting? Like, I think most guys at this point are on some kind of standard NIL deal. Was the punter really due that much money that he needed to opt out?
I don't know how much you know about punting, but it's the single greatest position in all of football. It's where all the athletes are. And there was a really good chance that he could have gotten hurt during that game. I mean, he probably saw the SEC championship, saw Brett Thorson tear his knee up and is like, hey, I need to protect myself here.
Yeah. I don't know. We just reached the point where we've got guys opting out of games because of NIL money, and and it's reached the punters. It's reached like the last guy on the bench. So I don't know. Just another one of those situations that I guess we're going to have to deal with, that every single player is going to have to get their money all the time. And if not, they're just going to sit out and you're just going to have to deal with it.
It's so ass backwards.
It really is.
It's so backwards. It is so backwards.
To me, it just seems funny. It just, if we're down to punters, your job is to go in and kick a few times a night. And if you're on NIL money, I mean, how much is it? I don't know.
It's probably something substantial. And I mean, if he's not getting paid what was promised to him, then don't blame him that much. But at the same time, it's like, you're kind of still hurting your own image, your own brand,
Right.
by
right.
not going out, because that's more tape that you can put out there for scouts and
Right. I mean, that's kind of my idea. Like guys who are star quarterbacks and stuff opt out of bowl games or whatever because they have enough film and they know they're going to get paid. But even the best punters don't get drafted. So you're going into any NFL draft or any situation where you've got to have every little bit of evidence, and you're going to try to have to earn a spot in winning for whatever reason. Just, I don't know. I would think that would look bad, but
yeah.
maybe that's
and then
just
you got to
me.
explain it during the job interview.
All right. Well, we will wrap this one up. Once again, thanks for listening. We appreciate you tuning into this show. Please don't forget to subscribe. It really, really helps us out. We will be back with our recap of the semifinals. And after that, we will have our preview for the national championship game. So once again, until we talk to you next time, go Dogs.
Go Dogs.